Tonight on 24, a chase follows a downed U.S. jet in Iran. Media outlets are reporting the rescue of one F-15 pilot and a search for the second pilot. The Islamic Republic says it will offer a reward for finding them. The Wall Street Journal says Tehran has rejected U.S. ceasefire conditions and has no intention of meeting with officials from that country. Trump says the U.S. will soon forcibly reopen the Strait of Hormuz itself. Netanyahu says attacks against the Iranian government will continue in coordination with Trump, the Israeli Prime Minister's fresh emphasis on targeting Islamic Republic commanders, bridges, and military infrastructure.
It crashed. It was confronted. Oh no. Oh no.
And the fall of a Revolutionary Guard-fired missile in the heart of Tehran. Eyewitnesses are reporting its impact in a residential area.
From the Iran International Studio, this is 24 with Fardad Farahzad.
Viewers of Iran International in Iran and around the world, hello and good evening. Reuters and CBS News, quoting U.S. officials, say one crew member of the F-15 fighter jet downed in Iran has been rescued. According to these reports, Donald Trump has been briefed on the matter. According to reports, this fighter jet was downed in Kogaluje and Boyaramad province, and there's still no news released about the fate of its other crew member. Meanwhile, the Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting has asked the public to apprehend the pilot alive if they see him, turn him in, and receive a reward for doing so. An hour ago, images were also released of American planes and helicopters flying in the skies of Char Mahal and Bakhtiari, which are said to be related to the rescue operation for these pilots. Let's watch a part of it together. Ardavan Ruzbey is with us from outside the White House. Ardavan, it's said that the president has been briefed. What more details do we know about the fate of these two crew members?
Well, I should point out that actually, regarding what was implicitly brought up across the virtual community, it took quite some time for government officials to want to comment on the unfolding situation. And as we speak right now, we still do not have any specific official reports emerging directly from the Pentagon to clarify the matter. I mean, the defense sources that are currently speaking to the press are confirming that a U.S. F-15 Eagle fighter plane, which some analysts say belonged to the U.S. 494th Operational Squadron, has indeed crashed. This contrasts sharply with opposing claims, as the Islamic Republic initially really pushed a very different narrative, heavily broadcasting the assertion that they had successfully shot down an F-35, a stealth aircraft. But then, when scattered pieces of the plane, including its tail and the rest of the debris, were found, journalist Fardad Farahzad at Axios emphasized that a wreckage was definitely an F-15, and now here is exactly where the critical discussion comes up. The F-15 typically has two occupants, a pilot and a weapons systems officer, meaning someone who actually handles complex navigation and targeting. Fortunately, one of them has been successfully rescued, according to the United States. This is a reassuring piece of news that CBS News also independently confirmed. Even before that, several Israeli sources, as well as Israel's Channel 12 sources, have corroborated it. One of them has successfully ejected from the falling aircraft and actually been safely rescued by recovery teams, but the second individual still doesn't have a clear status at this moment. The US military also hasn't given any official report regarding the current condition of the second person, but in Israel, the Israelis publicly announced that to protect the pilot's life, actually the occupant, potentially the missing second person, they will completely stop their ongoing operations in the immediate areas where this plane crashed, and they will fully cooperate to finally find this individual. Before this, the Israeli army also said that they will help the United States in finding the other pilot, actually the other occupant, and they are cooperating so that a second person can be found. But the issue also has a political dimension. Of course, before we get to the political aspect, let me also make a quick point. A humorous take, went viral on social media among Iranians right after this plane crashed. AI-designed images of the pilot that the Islamic Republic is looking for, sitting at people's dinner tables in Kohiluya and Boyer Ahmed. While he is reportedly out casually eating kebab and actively participating in local ceremonies, it seems that on social media there is an entirely different side to the public perspective. This contrast stems from what the Islamic Republic have recently asked citizens on state TV. They announced that if anyone could find this missing pilot alive, they would receive a substantial reward. It appears that in direct response to that official plea, a wave of sarcastic humor from the people in that region has garnered a massive amount of attention online. Even I have personally seen it circulating, and notably, several non-Iranian influencers have hit up on it. Ultimately, in the current global situation, the serious issue Reuters is raising, it says, remains a major challenge that the United States is facing. Before this, the CENTCOM commander, in his recent public remarks, Huber had emphasized that in terms of air and sea, the Islamic Republic has no access, and operations can be carried out very easily there. Even in the United States, as a form of mockery, they had brought up the flight of a wide-body B-52 aircraft, suggesting there's no danger whatsoever over Iranian airspace. Now, there is a significant new challenge, with this recent fighter jet crashing. This happened right at the time when Mr. Trump mentioned yesterday, regarding Iran's infrastructure, that he would hit all of it. He also threatened to sell Iran's oil to cover his expenses and return Iran to the Stone Age. This entire situation has garnered a lot of global attention, and actually, experts are saying this is a clear contradiction. According to Reuters, if the current status of this missing pilot is not clarified soon, it will be considered a highly dangerous diplomatic card to play against the United States. This unprecedented uncertainty could even fundamentally alter the strategic model and the broader challenges facing the war effort. As of this moment that we are speaking, the only serious high-level reaction emerging from Iran has actually been from Mohammad Bakr Ghalibaf. Taking to the X network, Ghalibaf published an English-language post that mockingly emphasized the irony of the situation. He pointedly remarked that after years of pushing for regime change within Iran, the United States is now finding itself in a position where it must seek outside help simply to find its own lost pilot. And many believe that Mr. Trump might want to plan something new regarding attacks on parts of the infrastructure and preventing the Islamic Republic's capabilities in its defensive attacks that an American Hercules plane has flown in Iranian airspace. And many believe the deployment of these ground forces on the borders of Syria and Iraq near Iran might be with the aim that these forces enter, if necessary, to be able to rescue this pilot.
Thank you, Ardavan Rouzbeh, from outside the White House in Washington. In the past few hours, many images have been released from Iran showing American planes and helicopters flying over Iran to rescue the pilots of this aircraft. Let's take a look at another part of these images together. Arash Aramesh, a lawyer and national security expert, joined us from Washington. Mr. Aramesh, I'm guessing a search and rescue operation like this, with helicopters inside a war zone in Iranian airspace, has probably been one of the most complex and dangerous American operations in this roughly one-month war.
A search and rescue operation, or, finding and safely rescuing a pilot or anyone who has fallen behind enemy lines, is usually a very difficult and complex military operation. First off, the specific images you are showing us today are really interesting. Now, if the images are played again for the viewers, I can explain a bit more about what kind of specialized helicopters are being used, and, how you can even tell exactly which unit they belong to, whether they are from the Army or the Air Force, and what their significance is. But that C-130 Hercules plane we saw, they call it Juliet Wing. It's mostly a refueler. It belongs to the Air Force. It refuels in the air and is used as a command post behind enemy lines and for enhancing communications behind enemy lines. But it also has another refueling capability, where it can refuel 2 helicopters simultaneously. Usually, search and rescue operations, meaning finding and rescuing combatants behind enemy lines, can be carried out by various forces. But the force here, which is especially an elite force, and also belongs to the Air Force, they call them para-rescue jumpers, or para-rescue. It's a very elite special operations force for the Air Force itself. There are definitely other forces involved here too, whenever something like this has happened. For example, back in 2007 and 2008, during Operation Red Wings, when a small reconnaissance team operating deep behind enemy lines got lost in Afghanistan's dangerous Nangarhar region, 3 of them were killed. When one of them, disappeared, various additional forces were quickly sent to rescue them. First, there are a couple of Chinook helicopters with 16 SEAL personnel. However, these are actually Army helicopters belonging to the 160th Army Regiment. You can tell from specific visual cues that these usually belong to the elite 160th Regiment. Look closely at this image now. You will notice they possess a unique aerial refueling capability. See those distinct holes protruding in front of their guns? Additionally, these are modified Black Hawk helicopters flying behind this C-130 aircraft. You see they have a specialized probe pole to refuel mid-flight. Most, actually the vast majority of regular Army or Air Force helicopters simply lack that advanced aerial refueling capability. But these individuals belong to the elite 160th, highly trained special forces and specific Army aviation special operations forces. It's nighttime in Iran right now, and the cover of darkness provides a very good opportunity for this pilot or co-pilot to carefully hide and completely disappear. Look, in special operations forces, whether they serve in the Army, the Air Force, or the Navy, plus all combat pilots, they go to a specific rigorous school called SERE, S-E-R-E. So this is an acronym for survival, meaning staying alive in harsh conditions. Evasion, meaning escaping capture. Resistance, meaning resisting interrogation. And escape, so you can successfully get away safely. During the intensive training, they really drill into you exactly how you can survive on your own for a few harrowing days if you ever happen to fall behind enemy lines. The goal is learning to navigate unseen and get yourself to a safe zone. If I want to say what the absolute first most critical lesson is, it's to immediately get away from the crash site. If you crash somewhere in hostile territory, you must get away as quickly as humanly possible from the exact location where the main plane wreck, or even just a wreckage of that specific seat you ejected from with its loud rocket motor. You have to get away. Get as far away as you can into deep cover, because that crash site is naturally the very first place the enemy patrols will come looking. Your best advantage is creating immediate distance. Second, get to an area where you can establish strong radio communication, like be situated in a secure safe zone, but still be perfectly able to communicate with command. It's usually a lot harder in rugged mountainous areas because, you simply have to go to higher ground to get a signal. Although, I'm sure from 10, 12 years ago until now, the advanced communication devices, the tech readily available to downed pilots and special forces have gotten much better too. But even so, ultimately, establishing a clear line of communication with command deep down in a valley is significantly harder than at higher altitude. It's night now too. Special forces can usually, search for their target and comrades much more easily at night. Why? Because the opposing side generally doesn't have the highly advanced tools and capabilities of the United States. That's why there is a major imbalance created right now. It's true it is night, but, the United States thrives at night, equipped with its powerful operational forces. With his huge technological advantage, he can operate and hide much more easily. Whether in a mountainous area or a jungle, he has the training to conceal himself from people. Of course, I truly hope he is still alive, and God forbid that nothing bad has happened to him and he wasn't killed in the crash. The next crucial point is the issue of food and water. All Air Force and Navy pilots carry emergency provisions right in their jumpsuits. They have a compact food kit known as an MRE, or meal ready to eat. This small MRE kit includes sealed drinking water. That is why for the initial 24 hours, there is absolutely no worry about finding food or water. Instead, during those critical first 24 hours, a pilot's main concern is rapidly escaping from that crash scene and evading the immediate area where enemy forces think you are. The immediate goal is getting to a secure place where you can establish clear communication, make contact with a command center, and ensure they can find you and bring you back safely. But keep this critical point in mind. The combat attacks have completely stopped for now. The sole focus of all U.S. military forces, not just special operations forces or search and rescue teams, is now dedicated entirely to finding this downed pilot or co-pilot. Since an F-15 carries one pilot and a relevant weapons systems officer, recovering these individuals is the highest priority. They will spare no effort to find them, and keep in mind that the combined might of all forces is engaged. This includes not just the Air Force's Pararescue 134, but also elite units like the Green Berets, Rangers, Delta, Navy SEALs, and various advanced reconnaissance teams. Even the U.S. forces that control surveillance satellites in space have shifted their sole focus toward finding this missing person. There are various strategic reasons for this massive mobilization too. But, I think the very obvious reason is that if one of your highly trained pilots falls into enemy hands alive, it can have very serious consequences, ranging from catastrophic intelligence leaks to dangerous propaganda. But again, I am saying that what is truly important right now is that he be found safe. Beyond that, what exactly happened that enabled them to finally shoot the object down? You know that the Islamic Republic especially doesn't have radar-guided missiles anymore. If they shot it down with a missile, it must have been a heat-seeking missile, meaning it goes after heat, after the exhaust. Was it a technical malfunction? Was it shot down by a missile? All these, or was it by surface-to-air defense? Was it with shoulder-fired launchers, which are usually harder to hit an F-15 with? The F-15 is one of the fastest planes in the U.S. inventory. It can fly at like twice the speed of sound. It has two very powerful engines that give it incredible thrust. The speed of sound, yeah, it can definitely fly at the speed of sound. It has two very powerful engines. F-15 Eagles, by the way, have never been shot down in combat. If something like this happened, I think it would be the first time in history. One time, an enemy missile.
If Mr. Aramish, but really, to a way, they were targeted by the Iranians and shot down, isn't this in contradiction with what the US president said, that Iran's air defense capabilities have been completely destroyed?
It's 100% a contradiction, you know? If Mr. Trump said something like that, which he did, we need to see if, for example, Commander Brad Cooper, was saying that the Islamic Republic's air defense has been greatly weakened. He didn't say it was 100% destroyed, if I remember correctly. Trump, well, he exaggerates, you know. We've had these kinds of problems with this guy from day one. Now, bless his heart, he's come and he's like turning the Islamic Republic upside down. He's doing a really good job. He should take the rest of the Islamic Republic and turn it inside out, reduce everything to ashes and the quagmire of history. But he also lies and, you know, he exaggerates too. Now he says, well, how much air defense is left? And then the next question is, where exactly in the air did they hit it? Did this plane crash somewhere around Tehran and couldn't return these 410 kilometers? 410 miles all the way back to the Persian Gulf? Or did it crash, for example, in the airspace of Chaharmal and Bakhtiari, or not? But just because it crashed somewhere doesn't mean a missile was launched from that specific location and that anti-aircraft weaponry was stationed there. And it also doesn't simply mean that they hit it directly from the ground to the sky. There are still a lot of unanswered questions floating around here. Right now, everyone's main concern is, well, finding him safe.
Mr. Aramish, regarding tracking, even private uses for tracking personal devices are, relatively easy now. I guess, well, the US military must certainly have more advanced capabilities. Do they really, physically go on the ground and manually search for these missing pilots? Or is there a clear signal, a sign, or GPS tracking that shows the search and rescue forces at least the approximate area of their presence?
100%. It's not just visually and audibly tracked, and, without the naked eye. I don't exactly know what highly classified stuff they currently have these days. But if I go back to my information from 10 to 15 years ago, even then, many special operations forces and combat pilots had advanced GPS. They had secure GPS tracking, and the ejection seats themselves have it. The plane definitely has it, and many of these individuals have it equipped. Plus, some of these communication kits. These are radios that can work for up to 14 days on battery. They're not heavy radios, not very heavy radios, but radios eventually have strong batteries. It has an antenna. These are in a single radio. They can talk with it. Usually, these pilots also have a handgun, which is now, called the Sig Sauer P320, M17, M18, a semi-automatic handgun with 9mm magazines that hold 17 to 18 rounds. They have 15 or 17. And usually, sometimes they also have another semi-automatic weapon, like an MP5 from the HK company, the company that makes G3, which is also 9mm. But in terms of finding, the question is, was anything detached from him during the fall or not? During the fall, and amidst that intense ejection pressure, when you press that button or pull the handle to eject from the disabled plane and get out, it's remarkably like two massive rockets suddenly ignite directly beneath you, meaning it comes up with an incredible upward force. This explosive thrust itself is like a huge, jarring force that can severely affect a pilot's body, and then also at the very beginning of the steep ascent, continuing right after the subsequent fall and hard landing of these ejection systems. All of these are valid questions, but just because you want to necessarily assume that he has his GPS tracking with him, his handgun with him, the emergency food in his left pocket with him, or the map he typically has with him, we have to assume he doesn't have any of these items. That's exactly why the United States must urgently mobilize all its forces, whether it's technology forces, its space forces, its air, its ground, and its dedicated observation and intelligence forces to be able to find him before it is too late. Without a doubt, the main issue is effectively handled by modern technology, but But after all, some of you might not even want to turn on the GPS. A person might genuinely not want this tracking signal, or as they say, this continuous bing or ping to be sent out, just so that others can easily find them roaming around there too. How do we know that the Russians or Chinese, how do we know that other hostile countries like North Korea do not have covert forces stationed there or aren't specialized operatives there who are actively helping the Islamic Republic? This applies especially to the Russians, who would undoubtedly want to do such a thing and secretly track this specific GPS ping. That is exactly why all these pressing questions currently exist. But on the other hand, I am absolutely sure there have also been many significant and technological advancements in recent years in maintenance technology. Training a pilot just takes years and years, even if we disregard the human aspect. An Air Force fighter pilot is a very valuable asset for any army in the world. Their specialized training, the countless hours they have to be trained, the heavy cost incurred on them, it's not a small thing. On the other hand, it's the United States' commitment to bring its forces back from behind enemy lines, dead or alive.
Thank you, Arash Aramesh Akdan, national security expert from Washington, for being with us in these past minutes. The New York Times is reporting that apparently another American A-10 aircraft has also had an accident near the Strait of Hormuz, but apparently its pilot has been rescued. We are also monitoring this news. If more details come, we will definitely inform you. The Wall Street Journal reported an hour ago that the Islamic Republic has officially informed mediators that it is not willing to meet with American officials in Pakistan under current conditions and does not accept America's conditions for a ceasefire. This is while Donald Trump had previously said that the United States could easily open the Strait of Hormuz with a little more time. According to Trump, by taking control of Iran's oil, America will gain immense wealth, and this action could be like a gushing oil well for the world. Fardad Farahzad, international relations expert from Washington, has joined us. Ms. Farahzad, it seems that the war's objectives are changing very fluidly, just like the war itself, especially from the American perspective. The operation itself is also encountering new complexities, like these plane crashes we've had. How much do you think we have now entered a new phase of the war, and a new chapter will open that might be very different from those initial estimates?
War is not a static issue that proceeds exactly as planned on paper beforehand. The unpredictable events that have happened today illustrate this, including this plane that was tragically shot down, the concerning fact that the second pilot's whereabouts are entirely unknown, this second plane you just mentioned, and a helicopter that had previously suffered a mechanical accident but still managed to safely land across the border in Iraq. All of this adds to the complexity, and at the same time, for 35 days, the Islamic Republic has been resisting the largest, most expensive, and best equipped army in the world, with the support of, well, allies like Israel and the region, and even the support of Europeans that Mr. Trump complains about. One can expect these tensions to seriously escalate in the coming hours and days, because you know Mr. Trump absolutely doesn't like looking weak on the global stage. This is true, even though all the recent reports show that Mr. Trump is primarily after two things: a highly decisive, but at the same time very short victory. And these two objectives, regarding the complex Iran issue, have practically proven to be impossible to achieve simultaneously. This is especially true because of how they started the war. I mean, they went after destroying military infrastructure without completely destroying the political structure, which just allows the current leadership to sustain the conflict. Now that things have come to this, it seems Mr. Trump has no choice but to escalate tensions and try to come out with a victory. But, wanting and being able to aren't necessarily the same. On the other hand, well, the Islamic Republic, it's true, has resisted for these 35 days and shown it can create problems. They're still launching missiles, but anyway, their resources aren't infinite either. And we know what damages are being inflicted on the country and its people. And it's true, they are seeking their own survival. But the survival of the country, the people, and people's lives are practically hostage and under the influence of all these days and decisions.
This resistance by the Islamic Republic that you mentioned, how much do you think it could be a double-edged sword for them? Because it's true, on one hand, it has made the costs of this war supra-regional, or at least regionalized them, exporting them to other countries. But now it has brought the situation to a point where the survival of the Islamic Republic is a huge nightmare, not just for the United States and Israel, but also for regional countries. Doesn't this itself make Iran's situation such that Israel and the United States have no choice but to destroy the Islamic Republic at whatever cost?
Look, even before the war started and during those diplomatic negotiations, we talked a lot about this very issue. Maybe even years ago, actually. Ever since there was serious talk of returning to the JCPOA, at least one of the main reasons why I thought it was impossible was that the Islamic Republic was actively seeking a broader conflict and war because they fundamentally think that despite this dangerous sword and blade being double-edged, if they simply come out of this war intact, their ultimate survival is absolutely guaranteed at any cost. So it really doesn't matter to them what happens to the country. That's also why if America's strategy is really based on occupying parts of Iranian territory, even temporarily to put pressure on the Islamic Republic, or if they want to strike infrastructure to pressure the Islamic Republic, it will face failure because the Islamic Republic isn't a modern government that cares about its people or seeks to bring prosperity, stability, and security for its own people like a modern government would. It is a power-centric government operating like a cartel, yet it possesses established state institutions like an army and diplomatic apparatus. To them, the country is simply a personal domain. As long as they remain in charge at the top, they will impose costs and violence on anyone, forcing even their loyalists to bear the burden, solely to stay in power. The Islamic Republic understands this path is a double-edged sword, but they accept the risk. They continue in this direction because they know the alternative, engaging in negotiations, will inevitably lead to their overthrow. Their reliance on a repressive force stems from rent-seeking and ideology. If they negotiate with America and make concessions, they can no longer provide financial rents to these loyalists or keep ideological hardliners who chant death to America and death to Israel.
حتما با سرنگونی مواجه میشن، چون استوار بودن اونها و این نیروی سرکوبی که بهشون وفا داره به دو دلیله: رانت و ایدئولوژی. و اگه قرار باشه با آمریکا برن مذاکره بکنن و اون امتیازات رو بدن که آمریکا میخواد ازشون بگیره، دیگه نمیتونن اون رانت ها رو به وفاداران بدن یا اون وفاداران ایدئولوژیک رو که بر شعار مرگ بر آمریکا و مرگ بر اسرائیل میرن و مردم رو کف خیابونها میکشند، اونها رو قانع بکنن که بهشون وفادار بمونن. حالا اینها رو بذارین در کنار تمام کشته هایی که در این جنگ از سران جمهوری اسلامی رفته و خب توی این حکومت خالی شده، فرماندهان زیادی، سیاسیون زیادی رو از دست دادن. بنابراین من به نظرم تا ته این داستان رو اونها بازی میکنن. باید دید که استراتژی آمریکا چیه. اگر به دنبال واقعا این چیزی که در بیرون میبینیم اگه واقعا نمایانگر پشت پرده باشه، خب مشخصه که استراتژی روشن و منسجمی ممکنه نداشته باشن. گرچه که اینم نمیشه دست کم گرفت که آقای ترامپ اصولا این نوع از این ابزار این نوع حرف زدن و توییت کردن و اینها برای گمراه کردن و ایجاد ابهام استفاده میکنه.
There is currently widespread talk about potential negotiations, although reports suggest the Iranian side recently rejected a proposed 48-hour ceasefire request. At the same time, former Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif has published a detailed article, likely in Foreign Affairs, proposing specific clauses on how the two countries can bridge their divides and reach an agreement. Given these mixed signals, do you realistically see a scenario on the horizon where the Islamic Republic might decide to unexpectedly bring up seasoned diplomats like Mohammad Javad Zarif at the very last minute to directly negotiate with the Americans?
Look, it fundamentally depends on who survives at the end of this story. The very fact that Javad Zarif is writing an article in Foreign Affairs rather than in domestic Iranian publications to suggest to Iranians to go negotiate clearly tells you that they do not have much hope in those who remain from the Islamic Republic themselves. Instead, they are signaling directly to the Americans, assuming they survive. You have seen the severe extent of the attacks currently being made by hardline figures of the Islamic Republic against Javad Zarif and Hassan Rouhani. There is a chance they might not even come out of this story alive. But specifically, they are sending a message to the Americans that if they choose these people, they can work with them. And we know that Mr. Trump is looking for this bureaucratic structure not to collapse. And that Venezuela model may be actually one of the problems with the situation we're in now, and America is caught in, is precisely Mr. Trump's idea to implement the Venezuela model in Iran by removing one person. And now he's facing these problems. problems. If you ask me, he's still looking to eliminate so many until finally someone is willing to sign the surrender. So when you take a closer look at the facts, the possibility isn't really that far-fetched after all.
Thank you, Fareshta Pazesh, international relations expert from Washington. Following protests by Iranians in various parts of the world in opposition to the Islamic Republic, tomorrow, Saturday, in the U.S. Capitol, a number of Iranians will hold a rally coordinated by the National Solidarity of Iran group. Tomorrow's march is scheduled to start at 3 p.m. in front of the White House. Iranians in this protest are trying to show their solidarity with protesters inside Iran and emphasize that the struggle to overthrow the Islamic Republic continues. Siamak Aram, political analyst and Heidelberg University lecturer, joins us from our Washington studio. Mr. Aram, please tell us about your plans for tomorrow.
Yes, the importance of Iranians' presence, especially now that communication with inside is cut off, and there's almost no internet and no possibility for them to be on the streets. The continuous presence of Iranians in various parts of the world is important to keep the issue of Iran, prominent, to keep the attention of the media, the governments in countries where Iranians reside, and the media focused on the issue of Iran. Although the issue of war itself has brought Iran to the headlines, the way Iranians participate in these gatherings is also important. For instance, tomorrow at 2 p.m., Iranians are scheduled to gather near the White House, and now, for almost 2 months, almost non-stop, every Saturday, Iranians have planned a gathering in Washington, D.C., including tomorrow, where the issue of executions, the issue of internet outages, and the issue of the release of political prisoners are central. There are several shared conditions and political values between monarchists and Republicans. One of the most critical among them is the absolute preservation of territorial integrity. These vital unifying points are actually going to be heavily emphasized tomorrow at this important gathering. From there, participants will begin a march towards the White House and then continue onward to the National Mall area, heading towards the Washington Monument, all of which are famously touristy and busy areas in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Siamak Aram, political analyst and lecturer at Harrisburg University from our studio in Washington. Just an hour ago, the Israeli Prime Minister told military commanders that Israel, in cooperation with the U.S., will continue its attacks to weaken the Islamic Republic's capabilities. Netanyahu emphasized that Israel continues killing commanders and destroying bridges and military infrastructure, noting recent attacks destroyed 70% of Iran's steel production capacity.
Together with our American friends, we will continue to suppress the terrorist regime in Iran. We are eliminating commanders, bombing bridges, and bombing infrastructure. In recent days, the Air Force has destroyed 70% of Iran's steel production capacity. This is a huge achievement that deprives the Revolutionary Guard Corps of financial resources and the ability to produce numerous weapons. With full coordination between me and President Trump, between the Israeli army and the United States Army, we will continue to suppress Iran. This regime is weaker than ever. Israel is stronger than ever. In Lebanon, we continue to strike Hezbollah. We continue to expand the security belt and strengthen it to protect the northern communities. With God's help, we will continue to fight and achieve all our goals. We are destined for joy.
Ben Sabti, Iran and Israel researcher, joins us from Tel Aviv. Mr. Sabti, at the beginning of the war, even before the war, the Israeli Prime Minister, many senior officials from this country and Americans were talking about regime change in Iran. They were talking about how the Islamic Republic must go. Now that more than a month has passed since the war, we see targets like infrastructure being hit. Is this a sign that the hope for overthrowing the regime has lessened, that they're going after targets like steel and bridges?
Hello to you and the viewers. Look, from Israel's perspective, the goal of destroying the Islamic Republic regime is still at the top of their objectives. But in this regard, there isn't really coordination between Israel and the US. And just like President Trump, in a way, took control of both the protests in Iran and the issue of regime change, or any matter that was carried out in this war, he took it into his own hands. And because Israel is forced to coordinate with the US, it seems like Israel has also, somewhat deviated from these positions. Also, because people didn't come out in the numbers they originally thought they would, they are now settling for hitting targets that financially support or provide weapons for the Islamic Republic. This includes places like Mobarak Steel and the bridge they hit yesterday. They actually want to continue this work. However, America is making a serious miscalculation. They seem to think that because they eliminated Khamenei or certain individuals they perhaps thought they could negotiate with, like Shamkhani and Larijani, the overall situation has somehow gotten worse. It seems to America, and this is really a miscalculation, that they think because, for example, they eliminated Khamenei, or some individuals they perhaps thought they could negotiate with, like Shamkhani, like Larijani. So it seems like things have gotten worse, and in America's view, they don't want it to get even worse than this, which is why they've put aside the whole issue of regime change.
Did you yourself, Mr. Sapti, expect this much resistance, or did you think it would collapse sooner than this?
Look, I think the issue of the Islamic Republic's continued resistance is directly related to how many of their top-tier leaders managed to survive. If on that very first or second day of conflict, when Israel and the US started very firmly and quickly and eliminated Khamenei and several other key leaders, if that aggressive momentum had continued and maybe 4 or 5 more crucial figures had been eliminated, then I firmly think the regime would have immediately felt a severe weakness. I personally expected something like that sudden decapitation strike to happen, but, well, maybe for complex logistical or informational reasons, they didn't fall into this trap that was set for them. Take a powerful figure like Khalibaf, for example, who could act as a critically important stabilizing weight right now regarding the embattled regime's continued survival. That's why I think if they continued or had continued more on that, it would have been much better than, for example, targeting facilities, because facilities don't bother us, but it's these evil individuals who are actually keeping this Islamic Republic alive.
One factor that seems to be talked about less right now is the protesting people in the streets. Why do you think there isn't much investment in that right now, despite the initial idea being that the government should be weakened, and then people would go and take over the institutions? We see that the supporters of the Islamic Republic themselves are in the streets every night, so at least there seems to be enough security for them to be in the streets. How can they go into the streets but the protesters can't?
Yes, I sincerely wish President Trump had heard your last 2 sentences and fully understood that the brave people of Iran truly want their freedom and passionately want to come out. Unfortunately, he somehow told all the people of Iran to just stay home. His strategy seemed to be, we'll bomb, we'll weaken the oppressive Iranian regime, and only then we'll tell you to come out. But unfortunately, as you said, about 6 days have passed since this war, and he's not willing to call on the people of Iran to come out. And if they had come out, according to those polls that even the regime itself conducted, if those 80 million stood against 10 million, well, the regime would really have been, as they say in boxing, knocked out, and it would have been gone. But unfortunately, I don't know by what calculations President Trump, for example, was afraid of this point. They should bring all the aircraft carriers, fully deploy their fighter planes, and even risk having 2 or 3 planes hit today, launching a massive search for a downed pilot, rather than weakly calling on the vulnerable people of Iran to act. As individuals who are Iranian-born ourselves and dedicated researchers of Iran and Israel, we remain completely stuck on this one frustrating point, why he didn't take this decisive action. And we can only hope for the people of Iran, because if this war really ends, those bloodthirsty individuals of the regime, the first people they'll go after, are unfortunately the unarmed and empty-handed people of Iran.
If this war ends without the fall of the Islamic Republic, do you think the Republic will be a harder Islamic Republic to overthrow for the people, or an easier one?
Look, maybe right now we see this regime as, for example, stronger and far more cohesive. Everyone is from the IRGC, and the kind of unified military government has actually come into being. But I think they've actually become much more fragile internally. Because in the previous era, even a few years before Khamenei's end, there were still practical individuals in this political system who had different opinions. They fundamentally knew how to maneuver and successfully protect this regime. Now, this current regime has become completely one-sided, and when it becomes one-sided, it inevitably becomes blind. In my opinion, the mistakes that can come from their leadership will actually be much more frequent, and the people's hand of victory will be much higher against this rigid regime of generals who haven't even allowed religious figures to enter yet. Ultimately, I think the people's hope and chance of winning this unfolding scene is much higher.
Thank you, Ben Sati, Iran-Israel researcher. Images sent to Iran International narrate the firing of IRGC missiles at locations in West Tehran. According to citizen reports, the unsuccessful launch of an IRGC missile in Tehran caused the missile to fall in a residential area near Merabat, and no reports of casualties or potential damages from it have been released yet.
It was for our side. It just hit. You saw it hit the ground, so be careful. Oh no. Oh no. They launched it from somewhere. There was a launcher there. These launchers. Oh no. Oh no. It lifted off the ground. They hit here? Oh. Oh my god. Oh my god. These ones.
Political analyst Mustafa Danishgar says that the Islamic Republic's technology is old and hasn't been updated, and the launchers, under the pressure of this war, might have made this mistake.
I think, well, we'll have to wait for more details to become clear, if they even become clear amidst all this commotion and density of news that's out there. But generally speaking, the issue is that this technology, well, we know it's an old technology. It's not up-to-date technology. These are the data available in open source resources. And the Islamic Republic has actively developed these systems. On one hand, we know that the Islamic Republic's strategic launchers, military facilities, and hidden missile cities have been under continuous pressure and attack. This includes strikes during both the 12-Day War and the February 28th conflict, which is the very war that remains ongoing. Furthermore, they have been forced to quickly relocate parts of these launchers, equipment, and sensitive facilities to other undisclosed locations. Plus, in terms of specialized human resources, we already know that extensive operational casualties have undoubtedly occurred. And the officials themselves, especially the commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, have referred to a very large number of casualties who were targeted at the launchers. And, well, all of this combined, in my opinion, contributes to such errors. Now we'll have to wait in the coming days and see if they will be frequent or not. But such errors, under the influence of this set of factors, seem to be happening, and again, I must say, we'll have to wait for both the details of this incident and also monitor the frequency of such incidents in the future and see if the missile program and missile launches have systematically encountered disruptions and problems or not.
These are the final moments of the program. Before the program ends, let me repeat two pieces of news that came in the past few minutes. One is that Fars news agency, affiliated with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which you know, has reported, citing an informed source, that the U.S. on Thursday, through one of its friendly countries, proposed a 48-hour ceasefire, but the Islamic Republic rejected this proposal by continuing its attacks. The Americans haven't reacted to this news yet. Another piece of news is again related to the war situation in Iran. At the beginning of the program, I mentioned the search operation to find the second pilot of an F-15 fighter jet. The New York Times also reports the crash of a second American fighter jet, an A-10 aircraft in the Persian Gulf region. Thank you for watching 24. Until the next program, farewell.